Everybody, this is Dream. Before I get started on this video, could you guys please smash that like and subscribe button? It really does help a lot. With that said, we have a 4-game slate here, so let's get into the injury report. For the Chicago Bulls, Dosunmu is questionable and Drummond is out. For the Heat, Oladipo remains out. For the Nets, Simmons and Curry are both out. Joe Harris is doubtful. For the Magic, the Suggs is questionable. He might be playing for the first time in a few games. And Cole Anthony remains out. For the Thunder, Giddey remains out. For the T-Wolves, Kyle Anderson and McLaughlin are both questionable. For the Suns, Ayton is out and Craig is questionable. So with that said, we have some injury situations to pay attention to today. But overall, it's actually a pretty decent slate when it comes to that perspective. Despite it only being a 4-game slate, most of the injury information is already out, and there's not a whole lot that's going to make a whole lot of a difference past this point in time. So let's get into the players themselves that we do like today. So Devin Booker is definitely one of the top plays of the day at $9,000. His price point won't stay this low for too much longer, I don't think. But he's been pretty solid this season. He's got a nice plus matchup here against Minnesota. For the Thunder, Shea Alexander, he's another guy that's been playing really well so far. His price point is going to be over 10,000 at some point, which probably sooner than later with the way he's been playing. And I look for this to be a really positive outcome game for him against Orlando. And he's been extremely solid. Even in games where the matchups aren't ideal, he's been playing really well. So he didn't play particularly great in the second game against the Clippers and Denver, but those two games, you can look, he still had almost 45 fantasy points in those. His price point's not going to stay this cheap for much longer. Then you look at Chris Paul for Phoenix. Now the risk with him is that he hasn't been playing super deep in some of these games, and you can see from the minutes, he's in the 30 to 35 minute range, but we want him in the games where he's playing in the last 5 minutes, which you can see he's done about half the games, unfortunately. So that does kind of cap him a little bit, but his price point has come up as well. He's not super ideal today, but he's an interesting play regardless because he does have big time upside. Then Kyle Lowry, he just seems a little bit too cheap for his potential on this particular slate. He's been playing extremely well with Oladipo out, and I look for him to continue that in this one. Then we're going to look at Kyrie Irving. Now, I didn't have him on the list at first, but as I was getting ready to record, the Nets said that Curry and Simmons are both out, which automatically just raises Kyrie up. It's interesting. He's been actually pretty consistent so far this season, with the exception of the first game of the year. So I look for him to be another good option. He's been getting steals and even some blocks in some of these games. They're just boosting his potential up even higher. Obviously, he's a great player, so it's just a matter of is he gonna have his mind into it? But he's playing 40+ minutes a game, and even then, the last time when he was in a back-to-back against from Milwaukee to Dallas, he had 2 pretty solid games there. So I look for him to be a pretty decent play. He is a little bit risky because he's Kyrie Irving, and sometimes some games he'll just get 20 fantasy points. So you do have to keep that in mind, but he has been playing extremely well so far, and I don't hate him in the matchup against Chicago. Obviously, Chicago has tendency to be good defensively, but he's been able to do good against teams that are good against guards so far already, including Milwaukee and Dallas and Memphis even. So I don't know what to make of him. I think he's risky, but he's not as risky as he was simply because Simmons is out. Same as yesterday. That's also true for Durant. So, man, that's going to be, I feel like that's going to make or break the slate. Okay, if you use Kyrie and Durant or not, and then if they both if they both get 6x or not. That's going to make or break the slate for a lot of people, I think. But we'll see. Anyhow, the next guy I want to take a look at is going to be a value play in Jalen Williams. Now, this is one guy you're going to have to pay attention to because now he has been playing only 2 games so far this season, and as you can see, the minutes are 6 and 27. So we do need to see if he's going to be the first guy off the bench for the Thunder today. But if he does, he looks like he's going to be the first guy off the bench today with Giddey still out. And if he is, then that's going to be a really decent option as a play here at his near minimum price point on DraftKings. Now, he's not super ideal because his price come up a little bit, but he is a decent value play, assuming that it looks like he's going to get the 25-ish minutes. And if you just remove the steals and blocks that he got in the first game, he would still be an okay play at that price point. But we'll have to see what that looks like closer to lock. Zach LaVine looks interesting today. He should be playing, even though he is listed as questionable here. Now, he's a very boomer bust candidate. Some games he goes, massive, and some games he doesn't. And so that's really kind of the difference here with him. But he does have some nice upside in this game against Brooklyn. Then we're going to look at Royce O'Neal. Now, he's one of my favorite plays on the slate now that Simmons is out and Joe Harris is doubtful. If Joe Harris was to play, then he would take a little bit more of a backseat. But overall, he's been pretty solid so far this season. His floor is pretty good. I don't love his price at $4,800 because he's not like a guy that shoots the ball a ton, as you can see. And he hasn't even been shooting the ball all that well, but he's getting lots of different stats most games. And he's getting, I think, his worst game is 17 fantasy points. And so he definitely has a lot of upside in this one if Joe Harris ends up being out and with Simmons being out as well. So I do think he's a great play, assuming all that is true. For small forward, Durant is an interesting play today. He was looking pretty good today, regardless of the situation with Simmons, but he's been really consistent so far this season. He played great yesterday. He was even really good in the back-to-backs against Milwaukee and Dallas earlier, a few games ago. So I do think he's in a solid spot here. He's definitely a little bit safer than Kyrie is, and yesterday he almost got to a triple-double. He played really solid. He played one of the better games I've seen him play in the last couple of years, and so his confidence must be really high right now, which is interesting since his team isn't winning very much. But him and Kyrie are playing well together, so maybe you want to ride that train today. Then we're going to look at Lou Dort, who has been just really good so far this season. He's had one bad game where he just didn't shoot the ball well at all and didn't really seem like he was all that interested against the Clippers. But overall, he has been pretty consistent, and he should get plenty of minutes in this game. And his price point is still pretty fair for his production. Then we're going to look at Pokusevski. Sorry if butchering your name for the Thunder as well. Now, he's been a little bit inconsistent, but in the 3 games that he has started, he's been playing over 24 minutes, and I expect him to do that today. His price point is pretty cheap, and he's a decent value play. He's not my favorite value play, but he's a decent one on this particular slate. Then we're going to look at Paolo Banchero for Orlando against Oklahoma City. He looks like he's in a pretty good spot here. Most of his games this season so far, he's been extremely good. The tougher defensive teams he's struggled a little bit against. This is not really a situation where I would be too worried about him struggling. He should be able to come out and get closer to 50 fantasy points in this one, like he has in several of these games. I do expect his price point to continue to rise, so just be aware of that. I don't expect him to stay at this price range much longer. Then Jimmy Butler from Miami, he looks like he's in a pretty good spot here at $8,400. Now, he hasn't been particularly dominant when it comes to having like a blow-up game, but in his last game against the Golden State, he did have a blow-up game, and I expect him to have potential for another one here. He seems to always play his best in the toughest environments, and that kind of has showcased so far this season. I look for him to play well in this particular game, and his price point is still just too cheap for his potential. At center, we have Vucevic for Chicago. Now, Vucevic has been a freaking enigma so far this season. Sometimes he's not playing late in games. Kind of got the Chris Paul effect going on. But when he does play and he gets a ton of rebounds, he plays the whole game. And there's a little bit of risk of foul situation issues, which he's had in the 2 games I think so far this season. But if he plays deep in the game and he gets the rebounds like he has been, he has big boom potential. He's the ultimate big boom guy because he could score 60 fantasy points on a given day because he hits 3 sometimes and gets. He'll have games where he gets 15, 20 rebounds. But he has been very inconsistent so far this season, which is really annoying for a big guy like him. He has so much talent, and so it's just a matter of him doing it game to game. So we'll have to see what he's going to do here. I'm a little bit irritated by the inconsistency, but I do like the matchup against Brooklyn, who doesn't really have anybody that can stop him. Then we're going to look at Bam Adebayo for Miami against Golden State. Now, he dominated against Golden State the last game, and his price is entirely too cheap, but he has suffered from the same issue that Vucevic has had, where he just has some games where he's not as involved. So I don't love him, but I don't hate him either. I think both those two guys are decent plays, and they're nearly the same price range. So, yeah, so that's the slate today for DraftKings. We have 4 games, like I said. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Otherwise, have a nice day, guys.